And another year bites the dust. 2021 was very interesting, at least on my end. Some good personal strides, a recruited partner to provide incredible channel art. You should totally follow and commission on Twitter at NeoArts, link in the description. And above all, a huge decrease in video output. But, hey, cool thumbnails, right? I'll do better, I swear. But of course, the thing we all care about, the media I consumed over the year, was pretty cool. Movies, TV shows, and the reason we're all here, video games. Although truth be told, I was worried that the latter wouldn't have ended up being quote-unquote cool. The first game I played in 2021 was Tokyo Mirage Session Sharp FE Encore, and Tokyo Mirage Session Sharp FE Encore did not make the list, not even close. And other than that, there weren't many games coming out that I was excited for, minus two in particular. Anyone watching my channel could probably guess what those are. I spent a good chunk of the year replaying old favorites, which is perfectly fine by me. Happy 20th playthrough to Vesperia. Besides, replaying old favorites rather than keeping up with whatever's popular at the time is just the kind of player I'm becoming, I've noticed. It's not so fine, however, in terms of considering the year in question's output, let alone determining the possibility of this video happening at all, and this is a channel tradition. But around the beginning of somewhere onward or so, this year became freaking stacked. And now that it's all said and done, I've gotta say, 2021 surprised me in terms of its quantity and quality output. All that's left to do now is to rank the 10 games I experienced over it for the first time that I not only enjoyed the most, but impacted me to that same degree. I just have one thing to say before we get started. As we do every year, this video is specifically named the top 10 games I played in 2021 because they don't all necessarily need to have been released this year, I just had to have played them for the first time. But slight spoilers, there are only 2 games out of these 10 that were released prior to 2021, if that sort of thing matters, none of which being my absolute favorite, so the best game I played this year is also my game of the year. And if you're wondering what that is, as well as what the 9 other great games are today, sit tight and calm down, because we're getting into it right the heck now. Gamers, players, lovers, get yourselves comfy and cozy because we're counting down the top 10 games I played in 2021. After being blown away by One Step from Eden, with that addiction very much still being a problem on my end, I was excited to try out a few more roguelikes, and my journey has been, well, kind of non-existent. I haven't gotten the chance to try out as many as I would have liked, and I worry that if I do find myself obsessed with another, it'll take up as much time in my life as this beauty of a game, and I just don't have that kind of time anymore. That being said, Risk of Rain 2 still managed to sneak its way into my Steam library, and soon enough it found itself being downloaded and played for a decent amount of time. My relationship with this title is still in its early phases, hence why it's only at number 10, but I've seriously enjoyed my time with it so far, and can only imagine how many more hours I'll put into it in the upcoming year, especially when I get good at it, because it's been a rough start. My first ever run featured me getting hard carried by my friends Wombu and the Green Scorpion, and silly old me thought I was competent enough by the end of our run to do some on my own. I couldn't even get past the first area. It was only when I started playing with another friend of mine, Mecha Saltman, that I made some progress, so for the time being, it's looking like this is gonna be a multiplayer exclusive experience, as I'm not good enough to make any reasonable progress solo, which is actually fine by me. This is a third-person shooter where you explore many environments in search of a portal to the next area, and I don't know if you could tell, but I rarely, if ever, play shooters. They're just not my thing, so on top of this game's general difficulty, I'm not the best with this style of gameplay overall, so it's a lot for me to figure out. And again, I haven't played this game all that much, and I can only imagine that I've experienced a minuscule amount of content available in this title. But even still, after every death and failed run, I unlock something new, discover something I haven't seen before, and overall just have a blast due to the general speed, variety in its playable characters, and beautiful controls, with the keyboard and mouse feeling light years more responsive than trying to shoot down targets with a controller ever could. The hectic nature of this game is invigorating and chaotic, but I never felt out of control, which is crucial for this kind of title. In addition to all of this, despite me not being sure if this was the developer's intention or not, the fact that I borderline have to play this game with other people to make any sort of progress gives this game a unique source of entertainment. I typically lean towards single player experiences, but I love being able to hit up some friends and be guaranteed a great time, and I don't see the fun ending anytime soon. Add in some lush colors, a cel-shaded aesthetic that'll always get me going, and a soundtrack that has no right being as good as it is, Risk of Rain 2 consistently tempts me to jump back in for one more run every time I see it in the corner of my eye when scrolling through my Steam games, simply off the fact that it's a ton of fun. I feel like I've just scratched the surface of all this game has to offer, which is exciting, and I can't wait to discover what other secrets and content this game has in store for me. But for now, yeah, number 10 seems like a good spot.
Hold on!
Now, I don't know if I made this too clear in my videos, most likely as a result of not talking about the series as much as I'd like to, but I love Danganronpa. It's a great series that provides unforgettable set pieces, an insanely fun cast of characters, and surprisingly enjoyable gameplay features. The series creator, Kodaka, has gone on record to say that he's done everything he could ever want, and Danganronpa as a whole received a very satisfying conclusion in V3, so I wasn't expecting anything new from the series and was okay with that. But non-canon spin-offs? I'm all for that, especially if they end up as fun as the V3 side mode turned full game, Danganronpa S Ultimate Summer Camp. Now, at surface value, this could be seen as a game that's nothing more than an excuse to see all of these anime characters in swimwear, as well as a crap ton of fan service, not entirely in, that way, but in the sense that a bunch of impossible character interactions are now feasible. And upon starting the game, this was seeming to be the case, and no lie, I was a little worried. You're immediately greeted by a ton of fairly lengthy cutscenes that gave me similar vibes to something like Project Cross Zone, where every character needs to chime into the conversation and finish each other's sandwiches so that all the kiddies can have their favorites contribute to the conversation in some way, shape, or form. I was also worried that the game would feel the need to justify any and everything through its story in some fashion, but thankfully after those cutscenes, the game really chills out and lets me just, play the game. I know that the main series games are visual novels, but that doesn't mean this game's gotta be one. Anyway, when the game does loosen its grip on you, the gameplay loop shows itself and the addiction can finally set in. Here's how it works. You develop a character through this development mode, where you raise their stats through hilarious events or conversations between them and another character or group of characters, as well as through a turn-based combat system? Okay, sure. The stronger you get, the farther you can go on this board, but you have a limited amount of time, so it's all about min-maxing, learning the lay of the land, strategizing which space you want to go to, and a little bit of luck to raise your stats as much as possible. You then use your developed characters to build a party to use in the battle tower, where you'll participate in battles that require a lot more thought than those seen in the development mode, since there you're in it just for the grind. Here you'll have to think about the party composition and put some thought into what skills you give your characters, since they have a very small selection of slots. Pretty much exactly what I wanted a certain other game to be, but that game's dead. You then get coins from this and some in-game achievements to pull more characters from a gacha system to develop and use in battle for even more characters, and it goes on and on and on and on and on. I thought it was primarily sticking to this game for the giggles and some cute moments between Shuichi and Kaede, but man, I became hooked on this loop real quick and it hasn't really stopped. This is a fun game to just pick up and mess around in, especially since it's a Switch exclusive, so if I find myself being lazy and lying around in bed, I can just reach for the console, develop some characters, and climb up the tower a bit. I don't think anything in this game is too crazy in depth, but it's just a lot of fun. I love seeing everyone not have to worry about drama or someone stabbing them in the back, figuratively and literally. I love seeing them just hang out on Jabberwock Island and have a great time in what's objectively the best season of the year. And screw me, man, I love the fan pandering. It's very heavy-handed in this title, but to quote my boy Comic Foil, I'm a fan, and I like being pandered to. It put a smile on my face seeing new sides to my favorites across these casts, and watching unlikely character combinations come to life. I've been having a great time with this, but do feel like it could have used a bit more to get even higher on the list. Particularly, there could have been one or two more boards here instead of just the island. Like, how cool would it have been to have the campuses from 1 and V3? Or maybe more in the way of voice acting. There's pretty much none here besides reused voice clips from previous games, but that's okay. Story isn't the focus. It's all about the loop of developing characters and using those characters to get more to develop. Lo and behold, that ends up being a great time. Would love to see more fun and creative spin-offs in this sense, because I adore these characters and it was great seeing them again. And so long as we don't continue the main series narrative, given the fact that the creator was allowed to end it in the way he intended and continuing it would literally be the biggest disservice to the story he worked so hard to tell, I'm all on board with more Danganronpa goodness. Oh hey, speaking of games with boards, Mario Party Superstars. That's right, baby, a good Mario Party. How long has it been since the last Mario Party I thoroughly enjoyed? Actually, that's a really good question. How long has it been since the last good Mario Party game? Okay. 14 years. My God. Well, better late than never, I guess. Mario Party Superstars is a surprise hit in the Mario spin-off series I gave way too many chances to, and even now after having played this game a bunch of times, it's kind of unreal how good this game is given all the missteps this series has been taken since the installment on the DS, but I had a good feeling about it upon its initial reveal and it lived up to the hype. Sure, it is a game that takes good elements from past entries rather than making strides of its own to push the series forward, but you know what? Mario Party needed something like this, so I'm perfectly fine with it. And if anything, it does get me excited for what could potentially come next with a game that is completely original. It takes the phenomenal graphics from Super and charming animations that came with it without constantly bringing the game to a screeching halt, so momentum is maintained while not failing to characterize these iconic personalities. And that momentum makes this game feel so good to play. Time is never wasted, as events, minigames, and player turns happen back to back, so games don't need to drag out and I'm allowed to stay engaged the whole way through. And the selection of boards and minigames in this compilation is really solid. Lots of old favorite minigames and even new ones that I hadn't gotten much exposure to as a result of not playing a lot of Mario Party these days, since I don't live by a lot of friends to play them locally anymore. The board selection's mostly good too. Now you may be wondering how I could have so much fun with this game when I literally just said that there aren't many friends who live by me anymore to play this with. And that's where this game's greatest saving grace comes in. Online multiplayer. No, not just online multiplayer, good online multiplayer. A diamond in the motherforking rough when it comes to the Switch's online offerings, and it blows my mind. I do not understand why it's so good, but I'm not complaining because due to this, I'm allowed to play the game as intended, alongside a full group of friends, meaning trust, betrayal, twists, turns, and a whole lot of BS, all resulting in laughs across the board. For the most part, it's all just kind of inevitable, but it's all in good fun. Due to the focus on multiplayer and the game giving me options to experience the most possible fun, it's like Risk of Rain 2 where the fun never has to end. But I put a lot more time into this game because, for one, I'm better at it, and two, who doesn't love a good Mario Party? Or better yet, who can't pick up on how to play the game? Anyone can have fun, meaning the pool of people I can play with is that much deeper. I can get my friends who are more casual Switch owners to pick this up, or for those few people who do live around me and wouldn't mind playing games with your boy, we can hop online together to play with some of those peeps, since again, the online is really good and has options to allow for this possibility. I'm already planning on playing this game for potential years to come, but if it adds DLC like more boards from the GameCube games or even additional minigames, this could very well end up being one of, if not the best Mario Party, celebrating the series' legacy and reminding us fans what a good entry looks like. I'm still in utter shock that it's good, let alone this good, but I couldn't be happier to see the party go on. 14 years may seem like a long time since the last good entry in a series, but it's nothing compared to what Metroid fans have had to deal with. 2D Metroid in particular hasn't seen a new game that isn't a remake since 2002. 19 freaking years, jeez! But this was the year that the 2D series would finally be allowed to continue with the surprise announcement of Metroid 5, aka Metroid Dread. A game that shook the internet so hard that even I, someone who hasn't played a single Metroid game prior to this year, got goosebumps from it. And you know what? Due to the sheer hype this game generated, this would be the year I changed that. This would be the year that I would play at the very least all of the 2D Metroid games. This would be the year that I, ZaffreRevolution, would become a Metroid fan. I only ended up playing Zero Mission. Not because it was bad or anything, far from it. This game is fantastic, and I ended up playing it a few times before the year's end. I just ended up a bit busier than I was expecting. And some other games you'll see on the list were pretty long, so... whoops. Anyway, I am still looking forward to seeing the rest of what this series has to offer because, again, this game is fantastic. As someone still new to this type of game, as you can no doubt tell due to my lack of experience with Metroid, I'm happy to report that Zero Mission wasn't overwhelming or anything. The map is very open yet meticulously designed to prevent me from getting lost thanks to telling me where to go, but not how to get there. That's up to me and where the fun truly sets in. I feel like I'm discovering things on my own, but every area is clearly made with the intention of being found before others in order to provide a stream of consistent growth. Not just on my end, but on Samus as well. At the beginning, I was weak and inexperienced, and combined with the atmosphere of a mysterious new world as well as a mysterious new gameplay style, I felt super out of my league and comfort zone. But the further Samus and I went, the better we got, and by the end, we were nearly unstoppable, an amazing showcase of telling a story through gameplay. One of the biggest reasons I fell in love with this medium in the first place. And even all the way at the beginning of my first playthrough, Samus still felt incredible. She's snappy and has weight, but is super responsive and quick on her feet, making for a kinetic game feel and fast-paced bosses. Those of which not being too hard, but combat, as fun as it is, isn't the focus. It's about exploring these locations and using your gained abilities to get more, whether that be the way the developers intended or not. I'm well aware that this game, as well as the whole series, is insanely popular in the speedrunning community as a result of how well they're designed and how much they respect the player. You're very rarely locked into a specific way to progress through the game, meaning that its replayability is through the roof. There are so many alternative methods to reach the end, and you can do it quickly even if you aren't the best. I could pop this bad boy in and beat it all in one session while having a ton of fun and doing it differently each time. And I love that flow, the hustle and bustle of it all. I'm not always in the mood for something super long, and this game's length is honestly pretty perfect. This was not only a great introduction to the series, but a great game in and of itself. And I have a good feeling that even after exposing myself to the rest of what Metroid has to offer, it'll remain one of my favorites because the ways it's designed and tailored to someone like me made it the best possible starting point I could have asked for, let alone one of my favorite games I played this year. It's also the last game on this list that was released prior to 2021, so, you know, there's that too. Oh, Undertale, 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 Undertale. I really like this game. I think it's great. It's a shame that my first experience wasn't really my own since I did it during its prime time where everyone was yelling at me to play it in a very specific way despite, you know, the game clearly being designed to compensate for different people's experiences and to incentivize replaying it a bunch due to the sheer amount of content you can see in different playthroughs depending on decisions you make. But I still had a good time. Much like everyone else, though, I was very caught off guard by the surprise release of its spiritual successor that combines Toby Fox's excellent storytelling with much more engaging gameplay, Deltarune. It's being released in parts, and back when Chapter 1 came out, I had a good amount of fun. Replaying it this year though, man, I don't remember it being this good. I played it all in one go and did everything I wanted, from talking to nearly everyone to even doing the optional boss fight. Of course, the reason that I replayed it was in order to prepare myself for the new chapter released this year, and I've gotta say, I think it's even better. I had an awesome time playing Deltarune Chapter 2. I know what some of you are probably thinking, Mr. Revolution, this game is great and all, but damn, your voice is so sexy. Please go on a date with me. To which I would reply, thank you, but please leave your thoughts to yourself, or, you know, slide on my DMs if you so choose. The rest of you, however, are probably wondering if this should count as a game on the list. It is the second chapter to what will eventually be a full experience, and you know what? That's fair. When all of the chapters do get released, whenever that may be, I'll personally end up considering it a full singular game, but for right now, this was released separately and feels like its own thing at the moment. So I think it's fine. Plus, this is my list. I'll do whatever I want. And I want to recognize Deltarune Chapter 2 as one of my favorite games of 2021. Personally, I don't find this chapter's overall story as engaging as the first's, mostly as a result of finding that chapter's characters it focused on a bit more compelling than the ones here. And I think tonally it was more investing because while it did have its humorous moments, these were balanced out with more sincere story beats. Chapter 2, on the other hand, is a lot more focused on the comedy. And that's not to say it's bad in any sense. It ends up being a lot more fun than Chapter 1's story, if anything, having tons of goofy moments, fun set pieces, and all tied together with yet another creative setting. This one being a city combined with the internet of all things. Because of this, monsters and locations are unique and all things I haven't seen anywhere else, heightened by the phenomenal music across the entirety of the chapter. And the gameplay is even more cleaned up than before, having a new act gauge to help showcase how far along you are from sparing the enemy, unlike before where you just keep acting until the game said you were done. This is especially useful in boss fights, acting as the health bar when going the pacifist route. It's still a blast to figure out what to do for every enemy, and like Deltarune, this doesn't come at the cost of an engaging combat system due to the addition of a full party, each with their own contributions to the battles you'll endure over your journey through the city. That of which heightened in Chapter 2's case because now your party members can also act. The bosses are a blast, puzzles invest me outside of combat, and there are plenty of secrets and hidden goodies to discover, including a whole ass genocide-esque route. It's pretty intense too, delivering on the challenge I felt the main route was lacking, while also having possibly scarred me for a good while in an emotional sense. It's a testament to how great of a writer Toby is due to how much he can make me feel on all ends of the emotional spectrum, but I don't know if I want to continue this run in future chapters. It was a lot. I was already excited for what the full Deltarune experience would look like after Chapter 1, but after how much more this one cleaned things up, how fun the story was, and how much deeper of a connection I forged with the characters and world as a whole, on top of intriguing me on just how replayable the game could potentially be with the addition of a whole separate route to follow, Chapter 2 on its own is excellent, and the fact that it's a small part of what will eventually be a larger experience, man, it's looking real good for Deltarune. Toby did a good, yet again, act surprised. What y'all know about Super Monkey Ball? Oh my god, this series was my jam once upon a time. Super Monkey Ball on the GameCube? Fire. It features a pick up and play arcade style gameplay where you pick a monkey and a ball and roll them to the goal through a variety of different, challenging, precision focused levels. It was fast, frantic, fun, and included a whole bunch of surprisingly enjoyable multiplayer modes. My choice for the best launch title with the GameCube, and it remained one of the best on the console. And then, oh my god, and then Super Monkey Ball 2 rolled in, and my dudes, this game's kinda perfect. More interesting and insane levels than the first, more modes to play, and a story mode? For what? Who cares? It's great! Not to mention it got me excited for the future of the series, but man, oh man, that did not go well. Just like with Mario Party, it's kinda surreal that this year, after over a decade of crap, we've gotten something like Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania, a game that celebrates all of the great things in this series that the company providing us with these games seemingly forgot. But you know what? This series needed this too, so here we are, and it's great. So great. Now, the physics aren't exactly the same, they're very different as a matter of fact, but in this case, different doesn't mean bad in any way, they actually feel great. Not to mention sort of give these classic levels a new feel and provide me, a series veteran who just replayed 1 and 2 earlier this year, a fresh experience despite the familiar level design. Yes, this game exclusively features levels seen in the first 2 games, as well as stages from Deluxe, an entry I haven't played before, but I don't mind that, again, because they feel new due to the physics. And if this game's just a compilation of sorts, that's fine, because it still offers new ways to approach these stages due to some alternate modes. Some stages have even gotten tweaks to balance out progression in a few instances and alleviate potential BS, with pretty much all of them having changes I appreciate. So all of my favorites are still just as good, and some of my least favorites have bumped up my list. It's nice. I love the roster too, lots of deep cuts in terms of the monkeys, a few Sega cameos which was a nice surprise, and even being able to customize the main monkeys if I so choose. I don't choose to though, because thanks to buying the digital deluxe version of this game, I'm able to play with the classic skins and soundtracks, which is my preferred method of playing. If there's an option to get these dumbass goggles off of my main baby, then I'm taking it. Unfortunately, the multiplayer modes aren't as great, specifically how they neutered Monkey Target being a crime, and the depth of the fun story cutscenes from Monkey Ball 2 is unforgivable. But overall, this game revitalizes the pick up and play nature of the original 2 I fell in love with all those years ago, with a fresh coat of paint and some gameplay tweaks, providing a gateway for new potential fans to hop on in. Clearly, there isn't as much to this game than further entries on the list and even a few previous ones, but who cares, man? This game is so freaking fun. I can play this game for days, and Monkey Ball's back. If we keep this engine going and learn from the levels here, I'm sure that whatever comes next will be a blast. Maybe someday we'll even have something to rival the original 2, but for now, having something that pays respect to those masterpieces as well as this game does is more than I could have dreamed of after some of those recent entries. Banana Blitz, man. I haven't forgotten. Now we get into the nitty and gritty. There will be 2 types of people here, the ones who aren't surprised to see this game so high, and those who are surprised that the newest Tales game isn't my game of the year. Whichever kind of person you are, I'm sure most of us can agree on one thing, and that's that this game is so kick-ass. The first Tales game in a while, with a budget at that, and my dudes, it shows. I haven't been blown away by a Tales game visually since Vesperia, and that was in 2008. Over 10 years ago. Kinda sad, but we're past that, and if games from here on out are gonna look just as good as Arise, if not better, we're in for some good SI candy, that's for sure. This new engine allows for so many graphical details once thought impossible, like proper scaling in the overworld to showcase how massive these environments are, truly investing me like never before. And in cutscenes, the animations are immaculate, with the subtle ways characters express themselves and react to everything. I can't sing this game's graphical praises enough, and can't take my eyes off of these party members in every scene thanks to all of this, even if a few of their designs aren't up my alley. I get that we're all low-key horny, but Kisara's cake window is silly, I'm not a fan. Now my boy Dohalim, somebody clean up this drool, my god! Looking is one thing, sure, but playing the game? This is such a massive improvement from the past 2 entries, Hysteria and Berseria, having a combat system so deep and challenging that I'm not primarily sad that the linear motion battle system is more or less dead, but rather excited for how this new combat can improve from this point onward. You're given full 3D movement and proper camera control to compensate, with enemies that have clear tells and ways to counter them, rewarding you with openings to string along smooth combos. These combos feel like ones you have to work for too, rather than just making it so that every single art strings together like in past entries, and even preventing the player from spamming since that's discouraged and weakens your move's abilities. Did Bamco watch my videos? Are you watching my videos right now? Because if so,
Hey.
It reminded me of my favorite entries, Vespia and Exilia 2, where you have to think about the order in which you let out attacks, since some chain into others better than most, and a few function better as starting attacks or finishers. It helps that not every damn move is an art too, so, you know, that's nice. Arise isn't the fastest game in the series, but that's okay because the game understands that fast combat does not equal good combat. It's all about flow, game feel, and the responsiveness of your characters, which this game excels at on all fronts. And it ain't easy either, it's actually pretty tough, having enemies that can take a beating and dish out the hurt, but like more previous entries have been doing, everyone has a lot of depth to their combat capabilities. Almost everyone was a ton of fun for me to play as, with my favorites in the battle system being Rinwell, one of my new favorite mages in the series, Shion, one of my new favorite healers in the series, and the main character Alfred having an addicting risk-reward mechanic with the flame sword. The big thing, surprisingly, that helped with this game's challenge department in a new creative way, both in and outside of battle as a matter of fact, was the CP system. It's a shared resource that charges your healing and, buffs? Yeah, that part's kinda dumb, but otherwise I really liked it, as it forced me to think about how I play, and with the inclusion of optional areas and shortcuts that require CP to progress, this encourages you to really learn the game and get the mechanics, as due to a severe lack of money, which I honestly really liked, items are more limited here than ever before. The game clearly wants you to get through it as a result of your skill rather than grinding anything, that of which being emphasized with enemies being a higher level than you'd reasonably get to at multiple points in the game. And I love that, because the Tales series, in my eyes, has always been one with a focus on skill mastery. That's reason number one for why it's my #1 series. And you'd think that with all of this, Arise sounds kinda perfect. Unfortunately, it's 4th place for a couple of reasons. I don't care about the story unless the focus is on Shion and Dohalim. The soundtrack isn't the best, minus the battle themes, I guess. I'm not a fan of the new skit style. Bosses straight up suck. And on top of some other minor issues, I hate to say it, but the back portion of this game just doesn't compare to the beginning. Season 1 of Arise, as I and my server refer to it as, was just way too good, whereas Season 2 feels more like an interactive movie at times. I wouldn't call it bad, but my thing is that it's good when compared to Season 1 being fantastic. You know what I mean? Especially as someone who wasn't crazy about this game's story, the fact that the gameplay to story ratio was as imbalanced as it was made the later parts of Arise feel more like a drag than they should have. But even with all of this in mind, the negatives are ridiculously outshined, making for yet another amazing entry from the best franchise in gaming, baby. It pleases me to see it be so well received and popular too, and I know that it's gonna push the franchise in some very interesting directions. Tales does it again. What a franchise! It's the best one. Stop trying to argue otherwise. A franchise so good that when many of its team goes to work on something else, it ends up being something just as good, or in this case, even better. Scarlet Nexus turned out to be my surprise hit of 2021, and in reality, I shouldn't be surprised. Just in that first trailer when it highlighted that this game would be made by the same people who graced me with the greatest game ever made, I should have known that it'd be top tier. But even still, I slept on it until recently and played the crap out of it when I finally got my hands on it. But before I gush about the many things I love about the game, let's get my big negative out of the way. The story. It sucks. My god, it sucks. The game had better be glad that I don't care or primarily play games for story anymore, because it's a mess. One that tries to go in many directions back and forth, resulting in me giving less of a crap the further I get in. Let's just say that there's a reason the skip prompt is always in the corner. Also, if I didn't care about the story already, I would have stopped at some point because most of these cutscenes look like this. Why? Money, probably, but it still looks bad and prevents me from becoming invested even if the writing was hypothetically good. Anyway, yeah, that's all I've got, because I love pretty much everything else about this gem. For example, despite the cutscenes not being great, this game still blows me away graphically, providing next-gen cell shading that looks like Vesperia taken to the next level. This is my favorite aesthetic and results in this still managing to be one of the best-looking games I've played. At the very least, the best-looking game on this list, with the art direction and color palette very much contributing to that title. But the gameplay, dude? That combat, dude? It's actually way too good. The feel of your character is unreal, with this game's major mechanic being your protagonist's psychokinesis, using your surroundings not only as projectiles to keep the combo going, but to add a multitude of twists to just about every challenging fight. Let me reiterate, every challenging fight. This game is low-key tough, and I high-key love it because it forced me to learn this game's unique design philosophies and ideas to the point where every boss and enemy tested me in new, exciting ways. Unlike the Tales series, this is a single-character action RPG, and honestly, that's kind of refreshing, as party members not only have smart AI and encourage proper team synergy like said Tales games, but can also be used to heighten my character's own abilities, meaning that at the end of the day, my skill is ultimately being tested. Sure, it would have been cool to play as other characters. Heck, having that option is still my preference, but the game was designed with the main one in mind, meaning more meaningful encounters centered around your abilities, which is cool. And besides, this game features two protagonists following a similar model to Exilia, but unlike that game, it's handled a lot better here because on top of seeing similar events through two different perspectives, they both in reality have their own campaigns to follow and party members to interact with. Not to mention they're not just gender roles, but fully fleshed out characters with established personalities and arcs to follow, meaning on top of the game being fun on its own and a joy to come back to, each route in and of itself incentivizes me to come back to the game again and again to see what else there is here to discover. It's not a long title either, with each story being around 30 or so hours, but I ended up losing myself in fighting enemies for fun and doing side quests because I couldn't get enough of the game feel. Even simple tasks like defeating X amount of Y is a joy because of how inherently fun combat combat and environment manipulation is, all of which becoming more and more fleshed out the more characters you get to team up with, and the further you progress your character through the game's genius skill system. A dope skill system to punctuate skill-based combat? Yep, this sure is a game made by the team behind Vesperia, alright. This game doesn't have as much going on as, say, the previous entry, but I didn't mind because what was here was so tight and cleaned up to the point where I didn't care. Every little thing is so fun to do that regardless of the overall experience not being as grandiose as others, the consistency in what it does accomplish will ultimately make me choose this game over the others every time. If anything, it'll be a game I can come back to a bunch, since if playing through it while watching every cutscene already didn't take long, I can only imagine how much faster I can get through it while skipping them all, thus incentivizing me to dive even deeper into everything this game's trying to do while messing around on higher difficulties. I can't say I saw this coming, but Scarlet Nexus freaking soared up my list of favorites, nailing a lot of what I look for in good-ass games recently. If you're like me, having slept on this game for a while, really consider changing that, because again, if you're like me, you'll probably end up just as surprised as I was. Inti Creates, my beloved indie developers who I can't stop getting on my knees for. Of course, they're the ones who granted me with the glorious Gunvolt games, with special mention to Gunvolt 2, one of the greatest games ever made, but I love a ton of their other stuff too, with my favorite series of theirs following the Azure Striker being the Blaster Master Zero trilogy. One is a great time that I find myself constantly coming back to, and two blew me away, with it becoming my favorite Inti game besides the perfect 2D platformer. But this year they came out of nowhere with the third entry in this series to wrap up the trilogy, and I've gotta say, I knew it was gonna be good, but I can't say I was expecting it to be as fantastic as it is. Blaster Master 03 is excellent. Excellent. As someone who cares less and less about storytelling in gaming, especially when compared to each game's actual gameplay, I'm consistently surprised at how much I care about these Blaster Master narratives, with the second one being a lot of fun and investing, and this one just being solid across the board. The characters are better here than ever before, the pacing is great given that the game isn't long at all, meaning that time can't be wasted, and the true ending? It's beautiful, man. Really got an emotional response out of me, paid respect to the series and legacy it worked so hard to establish, and above all, made for a perfect conclusion to a tightly knit tale. Jason and Eve's ending was satisfying in every possible way, and it feels so good to say that. No joke, I almost cried the first time I saw it. How they got me to care about this core duo, trio as much as I do, is beyond me, but Inti popped off, and I'm just impressed. But man, oh man, the way this game cleaned up the already silky smooth feel of Blaster Master 02? How does Inti keep getting away with this? I just don't get it. The tank feels even better than ever, having a ton of fun upgrades, a lot of which are similar to those seen in the second game, but hey, that's fine by me. I love them there, so who am I to dislike the fact that they're back? If not a bit more fleshed out due to more optional areas than before requiring proper use of them. The game features a few more areas to play as Jason outside of the tank in these side-scrolling sections too, but thankfully the devs gave him a jetpack since he still has that Donkey Kong fall damage, so deaths by falling from too high up are alleviated to an almost unnoticeable degree. All great stuff, but the biggest improvements are seen in the top-down segments, because my boy controls like butter. From the get-go, the weapon upgrade system has been altered quite a bit, where instead of getting new guns as a reward for not taking damage, you get all types of weapons from the start, but they improve upon leveling up like before as a result of playing well, thus allowing for the game to reward skillful players without punishing those who aren't as good as others, since you can still experiment with different kinds of attacks. Not to mention, because of this, these segments are allowed to be designed around the fact that the player will always have multiple weapon types, meaning that different enemies can react to weapons in different ways, and light puzzle solving can now be incorporated into these areas. So the level design is a lot more interesting here than ever before. Combat in general is a lot more interesting, with the bosses in particular finally being able to reach the status I know Inti is capable of if the Gunvolt games are anything to go by. These in particular have been pretty weak across the trilogy, so I was very impressed with them here, especially in the endgame. BMZ3 tended to genuinely challenge me on multiple occasions. That ended up being one of its biggest strengths, as I was forced to immerse myself into the mechanics and gameplay more so than ever before. And this focus on combat didn't come at the cost of exploration, as the map is the best seen across all of these games, meaning that the pacing and difficulty curve was the best it could be without losing that explorative design mentality. As such, I can see myself coming back to this game a hell of a lot, regardless of this game not featuring the likes of EX character modes or any alternate methods to play the game in general, because the core experience is simply that damn clean. Matter of fact, the footage you're seeing is actually my second playthrough, where I went out of my way to 100% the game and I had a great time doing it. I never care for 100% in games, but I did it here and I want to do the same in my upcoming third run. And what does that say for the game's quality? Inti Creates rarely disappoints, and this was no exception. I had such a great time, and I'm proud to be a fan of the series this game finished off in an incredible way. Truly a blast, a masterful game, and one with next to zero faults. No? Okay. Anyway, you're probably wondering what number 1 is, at least for those of you who haven't figured it out yet. And if you haven't, well, sit tight, because I'm gonna milk the suspense just a little bit longer. As stated at the beginning of the video, there were 2 games in particular I was looking forward to this year, with one of them being Arise. The other? Well, it's a game I never thought I'd get, and one that I was kinda at peace with never getting. But after 13 years since its original release overseas, the game was finally graced with a sequel that not only translated its gameplay in a new way to compensate for more conventional controls, that not only continued the story in a satisfying manner, that not only honored the legacy and cult following the original game received, it also ended up taking this year's throne by quite some margin. If you didn't know before, you know what it is by now. My favorite game of 2021 and personal pick for Game of the Year is Neo: The World Ends With You. I've gotta say, when this game was first revealed and continued to see a decent amount of press, I went through a variety of different emotions. Excitement, worry, fear, hype, joy, confusion. A lot of things mixed into one, but when the dust settled, all I wanted was a game that didn't necessarily need to top the original, but act as a worthy follow-up to my second favorite game of all time. And it pleases me to say that Neo accomplishes this and then some. This is a game that gave me very similar feelings to the first, while expanding on the formula and introducing new ideas to push this potential series forward, and I was on board with just about everything. The story has a laser focus on the characters, and due to the increased length without coming at the cost of pacing, more ground is able to be covered and more characters are able to get the screen time I yearned for back in the original. It brings me great joy to say that I found this overall cast even better than the originals, because not only do I love everyone in the core cast, Rindu, Nogrel, and Freddy Fazbear, but the side characters and Reapers especially blew me away, with Shoka managing to be my favorite in the game. Neku and Joshua remain my favorites across both games regardless, but when talking about the cast as a whole, Neo does it for me just a little bit more. And that's because of the natural dialogue, excellent banter, and fun dynamics across different character combinations. Since this story isn't so exclusively concerned with characterizing its protagonist, everyone is able to have their moments, resulting in me liking the whole a little bit more than the first game. The World Ends With You's style translates to 3D models and consoles in general so well, featuring excellent designs like before, the city of Shibuya being brought to life in a captivating manner, and all of which tied together with a soundtrack that, no lie, I might like a little more than the first games. One way or the other, it's really good and only gives me more of a crisis in determining my favorite video game soundtrack. Game music is just too damn good, leave me alone. All of this was already top of the line, but fellas, when I picked up that controller, I was blown away by everything regarding the gameplay, everything. Particularly the combat system, because it honors the original mentality of controlling multiple characters at once, only this time with controls more people can get down with. Every party member is attached to an interchangeable attack associated with its button in question, meaning you switch to the character whose attack you're using at the moment. Even still, you're responsible for positioning your party outside of enemy attacks, regardless if the temporary AI does a good job at avoiding them, and are encouraged not to mindlessly button mash, but time your attacks with a deliberate rhythm and flow to multiply damage and gain a higher DPS, making for a new way to incentivize team synergy and party composition. I found myself not only trying out all types of different pins, but also considering which would work better with one another, and if nothing really stood out to me, I just figure it out in the midst of combat. Enemies are all designed in a way that encourages me to recognize their patterns and attacks, while rewarding me with openings to dish out combo damage, all resulting in a higher rank, more battle rewards, and faster experience gains to try out the new crap I just piled up. And it encouraged me to challenge myself, as I can still lower my level like the first game, and I played a majority of it doing just that while in hard mode, which you thankfully get way earlier than you did in the first game to get a higher drop rate and more rewards, engaging myself with the combat system that much further. I was pushed by both the game and myself to truly learn this combat, a system that was foreign, new, yet exciting, and it felt good with every battle I won. And it just got better the farther I'd get with some of the most engaging bosses out of every game on this list, and new enemy types constantly testing me. The game also did a great job utilizing its challenge in order to heighten the story. There were parts where not just the characters were at a low point, but so was I, reflected by a temporary increase in difficulty whenever the story requested it, but never at the cost of the fun I was having. The game always felt fair, with only one boss giving me some frustration, but eventually, I was able to take down that noise as a normal enemy the few times it popped up. Player skill took center stage, and I was able to tailor the experience to exactly how I wanted it, with in-depth character customization and pretty much every stat being able to be where I wanted when I wanted, so long as I kept up with leaving my characters in shape. It's a game that respected both my time and prowess, and as a result, I respected it right back. It's also a game that never lost its grip on me, as more than any other entry on this list, once I started this game, I deadass could not stop playing it, couldn't stop thinking about it. Every moment I was free, I'd want to come back to this game, and every second away from it was a second wasted. I haven't been this obsessed with any game in quite some time, let alone any game that came out this year. Each entry had at least a small time period where I wanted to take a break, but for from the moment I first opened this game all the way to the credits, the disc never left my console. All of my attention was into experiencing as much of this game as I could in my first playthrough, even going out of my way to explore every open area in whichever day of the week I was on to get some side quests in order to progress through a surprisingly great skill system. I just can't get enough of the game. It's so well crafted, full of life and personality, and more than succeeds at being a worthy follow-up to a masterclass of a video game. A title that may or may not just apply to this one as well. I couldn't tell you what the future of this potential series holds, but whatever the case, it doesn't change the quality time this game provided me and many others with. It doesn't change the world, these characters, this banger of an OST, and this jaw-dropping combat. And it could never change the fact that Neo: The World Ends With You is easily my favorite game of 2021. I didn't need a game to surpass the original, just one that honored it. And despite those sky-high expectations, Neo still blew me away. What more could I have possibly hoped for out of my favorite game of the year? Speaking of Neo, special shoutouts to my channel artist at Neo Arts. Thank you once again for an excellent thumbnail. I really appreciate all you do for me, and congratulations on winning Game of the Year, well earned. Commission her if you have the money to spare, you seriously won't regret it. Link to her Twitter in the description. And if you have a little more, maybe, just maybe, you could join my Patreon? Link in the description to find out more about what that offers, including benefits like being thanked at the end of my videos. Special shoutouts to the $10 Mystic artists who go by the names of First Lieutenant Noguchi, Capone Ardelaine, Flora Grar, Kiara Loveday, Mecha Saltman, Neolab, Noah Ignis, and Upskill Wife 417. I'd also like to give much love and a kiss on the cheeks to all of my base and burst artists listed here. Thank you all so much for your patience this year. I promise video output will be better in 2022, and hopefully the quality of my videos will be better as well. Maybe motivation will improve if you, I don't know, like the video, subscribe for more, leave a comment on your thoughts. However you choose to support the channel, or not, thank you for just watching. It means a lot to me, and as long as you stay hydrated, I'll be sure to see you in whatever we do next.